Before the famous Bear Grylls, there was Caroline Grylls, aka Aunt Thally. We are always told to never judge a book by its cover, and that is true. However, you may want to think twice before accepting some tea and biscuits from this little old lady.
Okay, let's go.
Carolyn Mickelson was born sometime between 1888 and 1890 in Balmain, Sydney, Australia.
Oh, she's an Aussie.
She's a Aussie.
Who the is that? I thought we were watching about Thally.
Yes, Aunt Thally.
Oh.
There isn't really a lot of information of her growing up because, hello, born in 1890, and plus we don't really know exactly her year of birth.
1890? This is an old bitty bit.
It's an old biddy. I didn't like doing it.
Why?
Oh, I hate not being able to find information. And dates. It's
Oh, I see.
We do know that her father was a labourer by the name of George Mickelson, and her mother's name was Mary. So not a lot growing up, and on the 22nd of April 1908, Caroline became Mrs. Grylls with her father's consent, and she married Richard William Grylls. So Dick Willie Grylls.
Dick Grills.
Richard William Grylls.
Yeah, Dick Bill Grills. But also,
William.
I thought that you were about to say she married her father.
That's not today's case, Dull.
Thank God.
Richard and Caroline would go on to have 5 sons and a daughter, or 4 sons, or according to some reports, 5 daughters and 1 son. Look, she had some kids, and some reports say
She had kids.
she had kids. Well, it was too annoying. There was like I couldn't find actual court documents, and then some people were like she had 5 daughters. I'm like, no, she didn't. So I think she had more sons than who knows? Kids. She had kids, and some reports say that 2 or 1 of those children would die at what age? I know not. But what I do know is that one of her sons, had contracted typhoid fever whilst working as a lifesaver in Maroubra. Oh. Apparently, he found a rotting body of a surfer and brought him in, and then boom, typhoid.
Boom. Typhoid.
When Caroline's father passed away, she would end up inheriting his home in Gladsville. And I was like, where is Gladsville? I saw pics and was like, oh, it's in the lower North Shore of Sydney. So it's like a nice...
Like a ritzy sort of area.
Yeah, I think so.
So they had money.
Well, that's what it looked like. This move to Gladsville would end up helping the family become more stabilised after moving multiple times in the Brunswick area. One thing that was always mentioned about Caroline was how much she cared and got along with her family-in-law, especially. She loved to bake. She would make biscuits and cakes for them and pop over to see her family or go and have tea with them. They loved Aunt Carrie, and from the outside looking in, you might think, oh, what a lovely little old lady she is.
It sounds like a sweet setup.
Now, I'm going to confuse you, but stick with me here. Around April 22nd, 1953, John Edward Downey, who was married to Christine Downey, whose mother was Evelyn Lundberg, and her husband, who had unfortunately passed away 5 years prior, his name was John, was Caroline's brother-in-law. So weird, your husband's name was John and now your son-in-law is called John? So that's like it's Caroline's nephew-in-law, I guess. Now, why do I say these names?
I don't know why.
Because they're important for the story I'm about to tell. Duh. So John, Caroline's nephew-in-law, so to say, came home one day to find Carolyn over for tea. His wife and mother-in-law were there as Eva, I think her nickname was Eva, but it was Evelyn, was currently living with them. Around lunchtime, Carolyn asked, "Can I get the tea?" She left the room, and while she was heading back, John heard Caroline pause, which he thought was weird, so looking up, he sees Caroline take her right hand back and put it in her pocket whilst holding the tea in her left hand. Caroline placed a cup down for her sister-in-law and said, "This is yours, Eva." Bit weird, you know, little sus. So when Eva had drunk about a quarter of her tea, John grabbed the cup and said, "I'll warm your tea up for you, Mum." John took her cup into the kitchen, where he emptied the contents into an old cup laying around, and he pushed it behind the dirty dishes. Once lunch had finished, John went back to the cup, grabbed a clean jar, and emptied the contents into it before placing it on the laundry shelf. On April 29th, John started to notice that Eva, his mother-in-law's hair, was starting to fall out.
Oh,
This is where he remembered an article he read about a spike in thallium poisoning due to the city handing out free thal rat due to a rat infestation at the time.
that's right. They used to use it for rat poison, yeah.
Yeah, apparently there was a housing crisis all around this time, so people were jammed in, lots of rats everywhere. It was like a problem.
But also, way to think the worst of people. Maybe your mum was just going bald because she's old.
Yeah,
Come on.
There were stories of rodents biting the faces of sleeping children, and all that was advised was kill them with poison. You could buy it over the counter, and at one point was being handed out for free, and the most common rat poison of the time was thal rat, the most convenient way to get rid of rats. Even a dead rat is a nuisance when its body rots in your ceiling or under the floor. Use Sayer's thal rat, the original thallium sulfate rat poison that kills quickly, collapsing their lungs and driving them outside to die. Rats cannot detect thal rat because it is tasteless and odorless, yet 100% deadly to the pests. Simple to use. So, thallium is a toxic metal that can cause vomiting, diarrhea, temporary hair loss, nerve damage, organ failure, brain injury, and death. Thallium poisoning can occur after a single large dose or after a prolonged exposure. I mean, the title kind of gives this story away, but yes, thallium was easily available.
It sounds like it was more than just easily available. In this particular case, they were handing it out for free because of the rodent infestation.
And the infestation. The infestationes.
So it's kind of like, hello, you didn't even have to look for it. It's coming to you.
Literally coming to you.
Yeah.
Now, around this time, there were plenty reports of people being misdiagnosed in the early stages due to thallium being rather hard to detect.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, you could lose your hair, lose your speech, your sight, have cramps. It varies depending on how much you've ingested. So John starts putting two and two together, and by this point, not only had Eva lost her hair, she had lost her speech and started to go blind. It was odd because the more tea they had, the sicker they felt, and Aunt Carrie was always over with some tea, but when she wasn't there, strangely they felt a bit better.
I think it's just a coincidence myself.
It's odd, a little odd.
Yeah.
Now, this would be where John sends off the tea that he hid a little while ago, not that long ago, to get it tested. It was odd because, as far as John knew, Caroline was super friendly with everyone and never seemed to have an issue at all. When the results came back, John headed to the station at once.
The police station?
Traces of thallium had been found.
No way.
Shock. I'm shocked.
I'm shooketh.
Now, a lot of the information around the investigation is a little light. However, we do find out that when John went and spoke to the police, an investigation was started and pathology records of Eva, Christina, and John found traces of thallium. Caroline would be arrested on May 11th, 1953, and charged with the attempted murder of Evelyn Lundberg and her daughter Christine Downey. Now, you might be thinking,
Yeah, excuse me, Ashley, this is a true crime podcast and she was caught before she killed anyone. What the f***?
nay, dear Mungbeans and Mr. Voodoo.
Oh.
You see, around the time Caroline was arrested was also the time that police were starting to see a rise in deaths and poisoning, and they thought, hang on, why don't we have a little look further into this to make sure she didn't have any more victims?
Yes?
Now, since 1947, strangely enough, Christine Mickelson, Caroline's stepmother, died in November 1947. John Lundberg, who was Eva's husband, died in 1948. And also that year, Angelina Thomas, who was Richard's sister-in-law.
That's very sus that they're all connected to you, don't you think?
It is a bit weird. So Richard's sister-in-law, and then finally Mary Ann Mickelson, Caroline's sister-in-law, All of these people had the same kind of illness or symptoms. However, they were all 60 plus, with Christine being 87. So kind of at the time, not much was thought other than illness and their age.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The family didn't really think anything else of it. A few bodies were exhumed and traces of thallium were found in 2.
Get out of here.
Police even told Caroline what they had found, and her only response was, "Fancy that?"
What the Fancy that?
It is believed Caroline could be responsible for up to several deaths. However, given a few of the possible victims had been cremated as well, unfortunately, we'll never know.
No way to test it.
I forgot to mention police found traces of thallium in Caroline's dress pockets as well.
Huh.
Police thought although they had a strong case, they were just going to proceed with the attempted murder charges. On October 16th, at 63 years old, apparently, because we don't fully know her birthday, Caroline's trial began with her pleading not guilty.
Of course.
She played to the crowd and even seemed to get a bit of a fan following. You know, a whole stick it to the man, because back then women murderers were not common at all. With this case, there was a lot about the end of the Second World War and how it may have affected people, like women especially, because when the men were away, they had kind of picked up and started doing things. Then the men came back from the war and they were kind of pushed back to get in the kitchen. So around that time, there was heaps of kind of...
Like a feminist movement.
Yeah, poisonings and...
Oh, not a feminist movement.
No. And uproars.
Well, there would have been, I guess, turmoil at the fact that these women had kind of found that there was more to life than having to be subservient.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, the men came back. It's better to kill them than to get a divorce.
Well, it's kind of like what you were saying. They've been shown a completely whole new world, and then it's like you're being forced back in. So some women were angry. And I think around the time of this case, there was another lady in Australia that had just been done for thallium poisoning, and I think she was sentenced to death. She was only 30. I think she killed her husband or someone else.
Maybe
as well.
he deserved it. We don't know. Like, it could have been kind of messed up. And I get it, though, because it's like, you don't really want to be told what you're worth and what you can achieve and what you can and cannot do just because someone else doesn't want you to be something or successful and make something of yourself, right? So that kind of me off. So I kind of support a little bit of the death that some of those husbands may have suffered from.
Yeah.
Sorry about it.
If you beat your wife, we're a piece of shit.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
1950s just would not have been a good time for that.
No, but can I also say that there's like a part of me that would love to have been from
Oh, yeah.
1950s. In America especially.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to read a snippet I found from a paper on October 16th, 1953.
That's when you found it?
Yeah.
How old are you?
I will never tell.
All right, Lord Voldemort.
The paper was called The Advocate. I don't
The
know if that's
Advocate.
still around, is it? I don't
Probably
know.
not.
Who knows? Many women gasped in the crowded courtroom as the jury foreman announced the verdict, but Mrs. Grills drummed her fingers on the edge of the dock, smiled and blushed slightly. She then threw her head back and smiled broadly. Asked if she had anything to say why the court should not pass sentence, Mrs. Grills said, "Has one person, anyone, chance against 3 detectives? Can I ask that?" "Mr. Brereton, is that all you want to say?" Mrs. Grills, "I want to tell you what they did. Can I tell you?" His Honour said. Mrs. Grills could say what she liked. "They went to Mrs. Lane's place," said Mrs. Grills, "and to her and her sister they said, 'What did your mother and father die of?' They said, 'We don't know.' So Ferguson said, 'Mrs. Grills poisoned your mother and father.'" Mrs. Grills went on, "Now do you think that is right? Do you think any person has any chance with that sort of people about? I help to live, not to kill." His Honour then said to Mrs. Grills, "The jury has found you guilty of administering poison to Mrs. Lundberg with intent to murder her. The evidence discloses that under the guise of friendship and loving kindness, but with apparent motiveless malignity, you administer a poison to her, condemn her at least to a life of blindness and possibly to death. I direct that the sentence of death be recorded." Mrs. Grills turned to the police outside the dock and said, "Is that all?" She then left, escorted by police. Not long after that, I'm not sure why, maybe due to her age, but her sentence was changed to life in prison.
Yeah, I'm telling you now. Wait, where was she? Sydney, New South Wales?
Yeah.
That happened a lot in New South Wales. Judges were quite heavy on how they would charge people at the time, but the government would always step in and they would be like, no, death is too harsh a punishment for this. We are commuting this. It happened like so frequent. Sorry, that's just how I feel.
The more you know. I didn't know that. And she would pass away in 1960 of peritonitis.
Boo-hoo.
And that, dear mung beans, is the shocking case of Caroline Grills, the old lady who decided to poison members of her family for fun.
Because it wasn't for any other reason, was it?
There was literally, she gained nothing from their murders.
But I think it's also the fact that there was absolutely no justification in why she would do that either. Like, some people might choose to kill self-defense. Some people might choose to kill because they feel like you aggrieved them in some kind of way. Maybe you spoke to them in a tone they did not like. I don't know. But this person, they were nice to her, she was nice to them, and then she tricked them into thinking that they were somewhat okay, and then she poisoned them anyway.
So it's like, I don't know what was going on in her head. From 1947, was it like secretly she didn't like her in-laws?
And was all of that within, because I think you said 47 to 53, is that right?
47 and 48 that she'd murdered, and 1953 is when she tried to
Failed to
kill. Yeah. So they even think that she may have killed some of her in-laws' friends even. They do not know how many people, but
Right. And
this
Did
this
she-
would have been in her 50s
did she kill? Well, I mean,
that we know of.
there's no better disguise than a kind old lady, right?
And
Offering
she-
you food and drinks.
Yeah, she was described as a dumpy little thick-rimmed glasses lady. I was like, that's not very nice.
Dumpy little thick-rimmed glasses lady. Just an old frump. That's fine.
Yeah.
But my question is, did she only kill people that she wasn't blood related to? It was all like in-laws, in-law, family, friends stuff?
That we know of, yeah. Like she killed her stepmother, but yeah, stepmother.
Not blood.
So I've just shown you a photo of her, Joey. What would you like to, how would you describe her?
Short, fat, dumpy with thick rimmed glasses. No. Do you know what? She would be someone that, like, I could imagine stopping and having a conversation with her in a supermarket or at a bakery. If she were to
Or, like,
invite
in
me
the
for
street.
tea, I would probably likely, even if she was a stranger, I mean, now that we do the podcast and stuff and I'm a bit wiser, I don't trust anyone that I don't know, even then. I think her biggest weapon or her biggest disguise was how friendly she looked. Apart from with that scarf wrapped around her face.
I know, creepy, hey.
That was a bit weird.
Have a look at the photos, dear mung beans, because there's nothing grotesque that you can see. Police think that she would put it in her baked goods, she'd put it in the tea, like she'd
So
go over
any
to...
way she could.
She would go over to people's houses with cakes and tea and biscuits and, oh, let's have a chat. And
Right.
yeah, all along she was just trying to poison them all. So I don't know whether she maybe killed her stepmother, got a bit of a thrill out of it, and then she's like, oh, is it only because it was available that she started killing? Or
But
who
well, see, that's the
cares?
thing as well. We don't know if maybe an interaction happened where she thought, right, I gotta get this one. But then it's like once it happened and she got away with it, was then she like, anytime anyone even looks at me sideways, they're dying.
Or like, let's just see what this
Yeah,
will
or
do.
let's see what happens.
The vibe I got from her was literally just to see what happens. But then a hint of it's your in-laws. Okay, that was today's case, mung beans. Make sure you check us out on all of the platforms and our link tree.
Yeah, and do the following things.
And do the things and share us around and suggest a case. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
You've done a DP for me before, and I remember you're like that.
You've
was
done a
fucking-
DP for me before.
Yeah, a DP, double penetration.
It's hot.
I want to go home.
Ass titties. Does right. I'm getting along with you now.
In yours.
In yours.
In yours.
In yours.
In yours.
Baba Yaga. Dirty old girl.
Dirty old Baba Yaga.
Baba Yaga. B-Y. Bye.
Me.
Baba
But also that. Bye. Every time I see her, you want to be like, bye. Oh, yeah, cut that. No. It slipped out of the mouth.
titties.
Someone's onto that, Rusty.
What you doing? Rusty Craig, what you doing,
Yeah,
Rusty Craig?
Rusty Craig, what are you up to, you little poisoner?
William, I even saw reports of
P. Whoop, whoop. This is Canada Police. Whoop, whoop. This is Canada Police.
Thelmarized.
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 You've been
Yeah.
Thelmarized. Yay, yay. You've been Thelmarized.